Thank you, Fran. Shabbat Shalom. Greetings to you all. I hope you are all having a fantastic summer and that the solstice was a great day of spiritual energy for you and all you love. Now, before we begin, let us all send some healing energy to our loyal friend and supporter, Paul, the Bongo Man. He's been a spirit-minded being his whole life, supporting all who are of the light, regardless of background, similarities, differences, or beliefs. He knows we are all one, all connected, all part of each other. He has surgery scheduled and we wish him the fastest recovery. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. Bless those in need of healing, with renewal, with spirit. And that goes out to any of you who need prayers, blessings, goodwill, love. And thank you, Harvey, for that fantastic Moses joke you sent. It was truly one of the best I have ever seen, and yes, I can drive a truck. Now, whether you would want me to, well, that is another story. And friends, as an aside, having nothing to do with anything, I have to tell you, I saw one of the funniest shows I have ever seen, Fish in the Dark. We have all been there, we have all seen it, lived it. I laughed for 2 hours, and I think we need to laugh a lot more in life. Friends, there is much to be learned in our weekly look at what the ancients wrote and believed. It applied to their lives on an ongoing basis, just as it still can and does in ours. And this is not just the case of the Torah or the Bible. It is all ancient systems which are still read, still practiced, and still followed. Now, one of the things we are taught is having gratitude for what we have been given is the core meaning in our lives. Now, in that sense, the natural leads to the ethical. For gratitude compels us to acknowledge what we have and to give back what we have received. The sacred stories of Torah can combine with the sacred teachings of the earth into a new book of life, which we read with the body, the mind, and the heart. The divine is revealed in the world through 3 dimensions. In the world of space, in the year of time, and in the soul. Mei Hashiloach, the living waters, was an early 19th century Torah commentary that focused on the concept of space, time, and soul. 3 separate dimensions. The physical space of nature, the times of the year, and the spiritual movements in our soul of the days and the seasons within each of us. And I mention this because I had a great question about time, about solstices and equinoxes, solar dates in a lunar calendar. So thank you for that question. Now, believe it or not, they are clearly named in the Talmud. Now, for those interested, you can read about them in Berachot 59b, in Shabbat 53a, and in Eruvin 56a. And they are called Tekufat Nisan, the spring equinox, Tekufat Tammuz, the summer solstice, Tekufat Tishrei, the autumn equinox, and Tekufat Tevet, the winter solstice. Now, Tekufa is the word for season. And so when we read that in the Talmud, it's talking about spring season, winter season, summer season, fall season. Now, several ancient hints point to the possibility that these 4 turning points might once have been sacred days for ancient Jews. Now, a number of medieval Jewish legends also attribute special power to these days, and we just don't seem to, apply them in practice anymore. Remember, first and foremost, your spiritual practice is based on your intention. Creating a practice of the seasons might include new kinds of celebrations for these days, including blessings for the changing seasons and kavanot, your prayerful intentions for crossing from one time to another. Such creative inventions might actually be based on very old traditions. The Book of Jubilees, which is a pre-Talmudic word from several centuries before the Common Era, proposes an alternate solar calendar instead of the later accepted lunar one. And the text names the first days of Tishrei, Tevet, Nisan, and Tammuz as feasts of remembrance. Noah, according to Jubilee 7, established these 4 days as festivals in memory of events at the time of the flood. Because the calendar of the Book of Jubilees is solar, these days appear to represent the solar equinoxes of autumn and spring, and the solar solstices of winter and summer. And of course, because it is a solar calendar, it's one of the reasons Jubilee was never put into the Torah, which is lunar. Now, while the solar calendar proposed by the author of Jubilees never became the mainstream Jewish calendar, it's interesting to wonder just how widespread the author's ideas might have been and where they came from. Because significantly later, the Babylonian Talmud makes the suggestion that there are 4 New Years. So what are the 4 New Years? Well, there's considerable debate about what these New Years are and when, although the rabbis do propose separate New Years for trees, plants, animals, humans, and so forth. Now, one theory is that these 4 New Years once referred to the 4 solar transitions of the year, the equinoxes and solstices. And that certainly makes sense to me. And it seems to fit with the opinion that the world was created in spring, not in autumn. And friends, there's a blessing over the sun on each equinox and solstice only said when certain dates line up in a certain way. And so it's one we do not use often today, but might adopt for use. It's actually used every 28 years. Contemporary Jews who feel connected to the solar year might use these ancient and medieval legends and practices as the basis for new seasonal rituals in their lives. And friends, we have been asked and agreed to do special presentations on several of these special New Year, New Moon seasonal transitions. Now, the ancient legends of the seasons told us that the spring equinox was about the triumph of life. The summer solstice, which we just had the other day, is about loss and abundance. The fall equinox, the one that marks Rosh Hashanah, is the link between heaven and earth. And the winter solstice, of course, marks the time for the search for light. Now, I won't go into them all, but since we just had the summer solstice, here are its highlights from ancient writings. Jubilees tells us, in the story of Noah's flood, the summer solstice is the day that the mouths of the great abyss are closed, so that water ceases pouring onto the earth. It also names the summer solstice as the day that the Lord exiled Adam and Eve from Eden. It's the day the animals lose their power of speech, which of course reminds me of that great scene in Wicked when the animals lose their power of speech. And it's also the day the sun stood still, not for Michael Rennie and Klaatu, but so that Joshua's warriors could win the battle of Gibeon. And we are told in Genesis Rabbah that on the summer solstice, no creature has a shadow. Now, I bet you thought it was simply the longest day of the year. It was also the day that Moses strikes a rock, supposedly in anger, while seeking water for the people, and is told he will never enter the land of Israel as a result of his actions. And friends, we will read about that this week. We're going to talk about it shortly. If you were wondering why it is about loss and abundance, please note that it carries with it themes of closure, the mouth of the deep, the Garden of Eden, exile, Adam and Eve, Moses, and loss, animals' loss of speech. Yet also the benevolence of nature and the divine, the appearance of the water from the rock, the saving of small animals, and the standing still of the sun. We meditate on grief, yet also on the world's abundance. The summer solstice, my friends, is a day of paradox. Maximum light, but also a turn towards darkness. So thank you for that question. It was a great question about special solar days in a lunar calendar. Now, friends, let us fast forward 40 years. We may not know when certain events take place, such as last week's rebellion, but we do know when this week's events do. Miriam dies, Aaron dies, people complain, and God lets loose a plague, which is cured by Moses making a bronze serpent for the people to be cured by. And the serpent had a name, Nehushtan, which was finally destroyed by King Hezekiah many hundreds of years later. Wow! Destroying an object actually created by Moses himself, because the people would light incense to it. We are approaching the end of the 40-year journey. It is the end of the line. Well, it's all right, even when push comes to shove. Well, it's all right if you got someone to love. Well, it's all right, everything will work out fine. Well, it's all right. We're going to the end of the line. And it will work out fine, my friends, as this week we explore some additional statutes in the Parsha Chukat. We have had bookends in this Parsha, and in this book. This Parsha has bookends of death. Miriam's at the beginning, in a one-line statement, and that of her brother Aaron at the end. And we have bookends of life cycle on a larger scale. At the beginning of Numbers is the census of the new nation, with all of its pomp and circumstance. And the book will end with the death of that entire generation. Again, a huge bookend. Now, friends, this week's Parsha opens the door to a journey of Kabbalistic mystery through the ritual of the red heifer, a water purification process after contact with the dead and or to expiate our sins individually and communally. Well, we're not going to talk about the red heifer. Suffice it to say, this scene is also a continuation in the lessons about leadership. The wise leader prepares his successor. Eliezer is prepared to take on the role of high priest. Now, for a change, we're presented in Numbers 21 with a grumbling, thirsty, wishing they had died with the others group. And we witness the crime of Moses. Take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron, your brother. And you shall speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will give its water. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them, and give a drink to the congregation and their cattle. Take the staff, not your staff, not Aaron's staff, but the new symbol of power, the staff. This is a second obtaining of water from a rock. Once was from a crag on Mount Horeb, Sinai, and once was a rock in the wilderness here. In biblical Hebrew, the words were different. In translation, it appears the same. But the mountain crag was a sur, and the wilderness rock is a sela. Now, adding to the confusion, however, is the fact they both had the same name, Mariba. And Moses and Aaron assembled the community opposite the rock, and he said to them, "Listen, rebels, shall we bring water out of this rock for you?" There's that phrase, listen, rebels. The words God used when instructing Moses about the staff of leadership last week. And notice Moses taking miracle worker status. Shall we bring water? It does not defer to the power of God in this. And in our anthropomorphic world, which is what the Torah has become in this section, our jealous, sometimes egotistical God does not like this. And Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice, and much water came out, and the congregation and their cattle drank. But he was to speak to it, not strike it. And many try and explain Moses' punishment as being because of this. He struck it instead of speaking, as he had done the prior time. Is this his crime? Not really. Whatever the reason that you believe, though, the fact remains, for the first time in the Bible, a human has now changed a miracle. Adam, Noah, Abraham, even Isaac performed no miracles. Jacob manipulates the color of Laban's flock, and Joseph interprets dreams. But they don't perform miracles. Moses and Aaron perform God's miracles. But now Moses changes a miracle. This shift will continue in the biblical books that follow the Torah, and is one of the central developments of the Bible. Joshua will call for the sun to stand still in the skies. By calling for a miracle on his own without direction from God, he goes even further than Moses. It appears, friends, that starting with Moses, God, jealous as he may be, is entrusting humans with ever more responsibility and control of their own destiny, so that by the end of the Tanakh, miracles cease. There are no visible miracles in the later books of Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. Humans must direct their destiny with their own natural human powers, not with endowments and miraculous powers from God. And look how well we've done with that. Through the course of the Tanakh, humans are forced to grow up and become more self-reliant. And God says to him, "Inasmuch as you did not trust me to sanctify me before the eyes of the Israelites, even so you shall not bring this assembly to the land that I have given to them." Now we need to look at what was written instead of what we think. God says, because you didn't trust in me to make me holy before the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you should not bring this community to the land. To make me holy. They were to praise the power of God. And so by word and act, Moses is appropriating to himself an act of God. Until this episode, Moses had repeatedly told the people, it's not from my own heart. You're congregating against the Lord. But now, his words and actions confirm the people's own perception. It is him. He's come a considerable way from his timid attempts to avoid the assignment at the burning bush. Friends, the sin of Moses is not striking the rock. It is like the sin of Adam and Eve, stepping over the line, taking a power from the divine realm. That shows the seriousness of the crime, and so his punishment is the same: exile. The Torah is a fantastic book of subtlety, foreboding, lessons, morals. Step back, my friends, and you see an even greater bookend picture surrounding the life of Moses. The two signs that God gave Moses at the burning bush: his staff becomes a snake, and his hand becomes leprous like snow. This was the beginning of the Mosaic journey. These now are seen to have foreshadowed events in Numbers: the snake on a pole, which magically cures, and Miriam's becoming leprous like snow, both coming shortly before Moses' end. Friends, Moses was and is unique in history. Nothing could deny Moses' singular place as Israel's greatest leader and prophet, but the bookends of his role show us a more complex, more interesting, and more human Moses. The picture of Moses as striking the rock and saying, "Shall we fetch you water?" made the hero more fallible, while the picture of Moses, always with a veil, made him mysterious. We are rapidly approaching the end of the journey, the end of the narration, the end of Numbers. Deuteronomy is the farewell address and the summary of the laws. Remember, there are a myriad of layers to what you read, to what you learn. In understanding not just the leaders, the prophets, the kings, the patriarchs, you'll be whisked up and brought back down. He'll take you up, he'll bring you down, he'll plant your feet back firmly on the ground. He flies so high, he sweeps so low. He knows exactly which way he's going to go. As you continue your own journey, my friends, do not be afraid to look at things differently. Do not be afraid to honor those 4 special days. Do not be afraid to bring your own intention to your practice. Simply do not be afraid. As Gandhi said, power is of 2 kinds. One is obtained by fear, and the other by love. Power based on love is 1,000 times more effective and permanent than the one derived from fear. The world is sacred, and so is everything in it. Express your gratitude. Friends, light a candle, make a wish. Celebrate your life and the lives of those you love. Share your feelings with them. Live free, be free, honor your freedom. Be well, be happy, and be blessed. Share and honor the light and all who live in the light, and continue to shine. Continue to send everyone you know goodwill and love. Pray for peace and freedom for everyone, an end to terror, an end to hatred. And remember, friends, we are a community. We learn together, we celebrate each other, we love each other. We share this ride together. When I get to the bottom, I go back to the top of the slide, where I stop and I turn and I go for a ride till I get to the bottom and I see you again. Yeah. Thank you all. Love you. See you all next time. And I do love seeing you again. And remember, your wishes do come true. Bless you all. Shabbat Shalom.